Today, I'm going to tell you exactly how I got my first 5 web design clients. I'm not going to throw every possible client getting strategy at you. I'm definitely not going to talk through some complex months-long content plan you need to follow. I'm just going to tell you exactly what worked for me, step by step, screenshots and all. And not to spoil the end, but I didn't do anything that groundbreaking. You could honestly steal exactly what I did and try it out tomorrow. And the reason that I wanted to talk through this is that if you ask anyone who has started a design business or gone freelance, they'll probably tell you that those first 5 or so projects are the hardest ones they ever got. But they're also kind of the most important because those first 5 projects unlock so many powerful tools for your business. And these are the things that, at least for me, really took me from hustling for every project to having a booked out calendar and being able to charge those more premium rates rather than kind of new business prices. And I love hearing how other designers got their first few clients because everybody's path is so different. And that's because we all start out with such a unique mix of advantages and challenges. So that's why I wanted to share my story of those first 5 projects that I got in about 3 months, just to give you real specific tactics that you can try implementing and also to show you just kind of how personal and random this process can be. So I'm gonna take you behind the scenes of what was happening in those first few months. And if you're still in that kind of early client getting hustle, I've got some hopefully really helpful advice that might help speed things up for you. Okay, one quick but important note before I get into these stories, but if you wanna skip ahead, there's timestamps below. So, as I mentioned, even though most of us designers are working towards basically the same goal of having a really strong design business with tons of inbound leads, we are all starting from super different places. So just as an example, to be completely transparent with you, here were some of the advantages and disadvantages that I was working with. I had the advantage of being 10 or so years into my career, so I had a good network because of that. I had the advantage of having worked in a lot of different design fields, so I had a good amount of work in my portfolio. Disadvantages, I had 0 social media or LinkedIn presence / audience. I also basically had 0 level of comfort posting publicly. Another disadvantage, I live in Spain, making in-person networking in the US where my business is based, obviously very difficult. Each of these lists could go on, but my only point is that we all have our own lists. And I think it's important to brainstorm and stay focused on your advantages. And while you definitely shouldn't dwell on your disadvantages, I do think it's healthy to acknowledge that they exist, think about ways to work around them, and use them as a reminder of why your timeline isn't going to look exactly like somebody else's. That's the exact reason why you will never hear me say, as tempting as it is, do these 3 things to get your first clients in X exact time frame. Because I don't want anyone thinking that there's something wrong with them if their timeline looks a little different than mine or someone else's. That's completely normal. So when you're starting out, I would just think of yourself as a racehorse wearing those blinder thingies, focused on your goals, your advantages, and the things that are within your control. And definitely learn from the people around you, borrow their tools, talk to them, just don't compare yourself directly to them. And above all else, don't get discouraged. Balance improving your skills with marketing your business, because if you keep at both of those things for long enough and you play to your strengths, you absolutely will build a design business that works for you. Okay, with that out of the way, how did I get these first few projects? So once I had put together a foundational portfolio site for my design business, which did include a mix of real projects as well as self-initiated projects that reflected the type of work I wanted to start doing, or website concept work, the first thing that I did was post on my personal Instagram account. And I want to be clear about a few things here. So this is a completely normal Instagram account that's all friends, family, acquaintances. I have 880 followers to be exact. That's not 880K, just regular 880. My point being, I'm not an influencer. Secondly, I want to clarify that this was way out of my comfort zone. I much prefer being a lurker on social media. I post on my grid maybe once per year, but I knew I had to push myself. So the first thing that I did to soft launch my business was that I posted on Instagram stories. And this is exactly what I posted if you want to steal it. So first, I got people interested with a little poll. And can we just acknowledge that this is a huge percent of people who need or know someone who needs a website? Then I offered a few website 911 scenarios. And partly I was joking around with these, but genuinely I was trying to get people thinking more specifically about all of the people they probably know who need a website. And lastly, I ended on a more serious note and showed a little snapshot of my work. And again, this could be real projects if you have them, or if you don't have those yet, it could just be concepts. As long as it's actually your work, I don't think people care that much. And what happened after this, surprisingly to me, is that people were incredibly supportive. And it might sound obvious, but turns out people who are your friends and family and have some personal connection to you, the reality is, assuming you're not a complete jerk, people want to help you out. And a lot of people do need a website. So it was from this one post or Instagram story series alone that I got my first 3 clients. Not all at once, they trickled in over the course of a few weeks after I posted this, but they were a family friend who saw this story, who was starting her own business, my college roommate who we'd kind of lost touch, but they had a website for their business that they wanted redone, and another friend saw my story, and a few weeks later, she recommended me to her other friend who was starting a business and needed a website. So those were my first 3 true beta clients. So then what? So as I finished those first few projects, I would add them to my business's website as case studies. And what I did next was another kind of announcement post on the platform that for me felt like an even bigger deal, which was LinkedIn. So similarly to Instagram, this felt kind of vulnerable for me. I could just imagine all these past colleagues and mentors who I respect so much seeing my post and thinking, what is she doing? Or I would wonder to myself, what if they went to my business's website and they didn't think the work was good? But I realized that if I was really going to do this, as in have my own business and actually grow it, I really needed to accept the idea that people were going to think whatever they thought. And if someone didn't love my work or they thought my posts were cringy, then let them think that. It's actually not the end of the world. So I posted on LinkedIn. I even included a photo because I heard that the elusive algorithm likes photos. And then I did something a bit embarrassing to admit, but I was so encouraged by how supportive everyone had been on Instagram that as soon as I posted on LinkedIn, I posted this on Instagram. I asked people to engage with that post. And guess what? People came through. I think it really helped boost this post, which for me obviously was a really important one. So interestingly, although this post was ultimately seen by a lot of people, I only got a handful of leads from it, and ultimately I signed 1 new client from it. However, I will say that that was my biggest, kind of most exciting project up until that point. And in these early stages, every project really counts and makes a difference, so I considered this another win. My 5th project, and a few beyond that actually, came from the most unexpected channel, if you can call it that. So the backstory is that, unrelated to marketing my business, During this time, I was also reaching out to a lot of other designers who I came across who had businesses that were similar to the one that I was trying to build. So people who were a little further down the design entrepreneur path. And one of those people who I had virtual coffee with was a very talented and kind brand designer who gave me some awesome tips and words of encouragement. We connected on LinkedIn and kind of went our separate ways. However, a few weeks later, I got a web design project inquiry in my inbox from a business owner who had met with her, this other designer, and while she ultimately wasn't a great fit for what he needed, she recommended that he reach out to me. I thought this was pretty cool because I hadn't really been angling for work when I met with that other designer. I had just told her what type of work I liked doing. I told her I was curious about her business. We chatted about design stuff, and that was that. But since then, she has actually sent me multiple great projects. And I've learned that this type of relationship is often called having a referral partnership. So it's basically finding someone who isn't a direct competitor, either because their business is in a very different phase than yours, or because they offer a related but different service. And then either they send you work, sometimes for a small kickback, or even better, you send each other work. So I guess the moral of that story is that when you're starting out, any type of new connection can be a really good one. I know that everyone hates the word networking, so do I. So I just wouldn't think of it as networking. Just think of it as connecting with cool people who you're interested in. And it would be awesome, obviously, if it led to work. But if not, you got to meet with hopefully a really cool person and talk about a topic that you're excited about and learn a bit about someone new. So I think generally people are a lot more receptive to this than you think. All right, a couple quick notes before we wrap up. One is that if I made all of this sound super easy breezy, don't get me wrong, I spent a lot of time on other channels and tactics that didn't result in any signed projects. Here's a few examples. And I really think this is okay, especially in the beginning. It's really about throwing a lot of stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks, and then leaning into the methods that work the best for you. Another note is that for my first 5 projects, I personally decided to have a money doesn't matter mentality. And that doesn't mean that I worked for free or that I let clients walk all over me, but it does mean that I worked for significantly below what I knew I would like to be earning in the near future. And yes, this was a bit painful at times. There was moments I remember feeling like, oh, this client is already getting such a good deal and they're still asking me for all these extra things. But in these moments, I kind of had this mantra of this project is a building block of my business. Because like I mentioned in the beginning, I really forced myself to focus on what I was getting out of these projects, which was a lot. I also reminded myself that this way of working would not be a forever thing, and it wasn't. I hope you found this helpful, and if you're curious about learning more about what came before this client getting phase or what came after it, definitely stay tuned because I'll be doing in-depth videos of all of that. And I'm genuinely curious to know other people's stories of getting their first few projects, so definitely let me know in the comments. Thanks, see you next time.